Hello, everyone. Welcome to the chat show where we talk about empathy, employment, and innovation every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Today's show, we have Mary Oakley, who is a connector, an advocate, and a champion for special needs education and employment for neurodiverse population. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nish. I'm pleased to be here. It's great to see you again.
Yes, so Mary, please share a little bit about your background, what you do, what your passion is, because I'm really, impressed with all the work and networking you do for neurodiverse individuals and talent and in the special needs world. So please tell us a little bit about your background and your passion.
Oh, thanks very much, Nish. Well, I suppose it all happened organically. One thing led to another. I'm a connector and business developer, and I promote businesses and I connect people to form new alliances in business, and I really, really enjoy it. Especially connecting people in the world of autism because that's close to my heart. As you know, I've experienced it in my own life, my family, and I've met wonderful people in the autistic community. And I was lucky enough to meet you in Hettle, and when you came to Ireland. Um, so that's basically what I do, and I love doing it.
No, absolutely, and we spent almost a full day, and it was just thank you for giving us the insightful knowledge what's happening in Ireland in the autism and disability community. So we thank you for that. So tell us about a little bit about what's happening in Ireland, and I have learned something from you that self advocacy is great, which is we always talk about self advocacy, but something which is I have started learning from you and others is how do we go from self advocacy to really action, taking action. So share some of the things happening in your network.
Well, in Ireland, especially, I think autistic people who are in their 20s now, and even people who are adults who've been diagnosed in the past few years, are taking charge of autism in Ireland. And one of them being Adam Harris, as I am. Now, he founded the main umbrella body for autism and advocacy in Ireland, a great organisation called As I Am, and we're very proud of Adam. And other people like Evelyn Wilton in Cork with Awesome. She had a wonderful conference there for the past few years. And Dublin City University happened to be the world's first autism-friendly university. Before COVID, of course, a lot of towns were becoming autism friendly. So that's the next step. And some businesses and organizations now are really embracing it and sponsoring this and promoting and becoming very neurodiverse aware. A lot of the big companies are taking a very serious approach to neurodiversity too. And we also have specialists in Ireland. So working with companies. So it's all very good and very positive, but like everything, it's a work in progress, and there's always more to be done. And that's why I think I'm a huge champion of Rangam. I love what you do, and I think you have a super understanding of autism and how empathy drives innovation. So I can't wait to see what you do next with your software. You start with the diagnosis and you work the whole way up to employment. And you cater for all, not just Asperger's, you cater for everyone on the spectrum. And that's really good.
No, thank you, Mary. Really, thank you for all the great work you do, also. And one of the thing what is changed in last 6 months, as we all know, this pandemic has really made it very difficult for families and individuals on the spectrum and people with disability with various challenges. So, as a mother, what are the new challenges you have been facing in last 6 months?
Well, it means we're all here in the house. Myself and my three children, my three adult children, are all here working at home now, either in college or my daughter started work for a large company, and I think it's isolation, and also we're all trying to live together for adults, um, and that's hard at the best of times. But I suppose it's not the worst thing. I haven't a lot to complain about. But it stops people from moving on with their lives. And I suppose um, they are trying to find their space and grow as adults. And I'm a mother and I'm trying not to be mummy and trying to encourage them to do their own thing. Um, so they're just little challenges we have, but nothing huge, I must say, because everyone likes to be in their own home.
Yeah, and I like you mentioned in our previous conversation about physical space and the mental space or something like
Yeah.
that. What do you
Yes.
mean? Yeah,
Well, everyone needs their space, because we all have different hobbies, different interests,
yeah,
and even music and all of that. So that is, it can be difficult to find that little space for ourselves, and even to cook. When we all want to cook at the same time, and if we want to cook different things, do it ourselves. So COVID has brought up all sorts of um, new situations, um, but we are dealing with them fairly well. It's just trying to get new routines going.
yeah.
Mm.
So you mentioned you are dealing with that and new routine. Maybe a little bit more about like some advice for other parents that how you are really managing and building this new routine and
Well, I always think positive and work together, um, because there's no point in arguing with one another. We all work fairly well together, and to parents even trying to we have to embrace these changes, and people on the spectrum, it's very hard to embrace change. So it just takes time, time and patience, and we'll all get there in the end.
yes, excellent, excellent. Thank you for that advice. And that advice is for everyone, like every parent and every individual. And it can be applied to the organizations. And whenever we are working in the team environment, the same rule applies, right? And as during this COVID period, we have this many me concept, which I have just learned in my previous segment. That we all have so many different roles to play, and similarly within the home environment, everyone is doing the same now, working from, as your daughter is working from home, starting a new career, some of those challenges, and it is challenging for everyone.
For, for a parent, being always here and available as well, that's quite challenging. Um, because I suppose, I remember I didn't move out of my parents' house until I was 26. And you'd still think you're, entitled to this, that, and the other. Um, Everyone wants to start their own life, but now we've been forced to do things differently.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
So it suits people with autism to stay the same anyway. So I suppose the challenge for them is, um, that they might get too comfortable and not want to move on. And I hope the restrictions, and I hope this whole pandemic doesn't last too long, because they need to be able to move on and start their own lives. And this is their comfort zone, their home. So they can get set in their ways very easily. And everybody needs to gain independence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And as you said, moving on is always, when they are starting their career, or even in the education, right? In the education system also, some of the challenges we face as a family is just tremendous. And I know you are a big advocate of special needs education and what are the changes we need to bring. So share a little bit on that also.
well, I think one of the biggest challenges is moving from primary education to secondary education, because that's when hormones change. That's when you go from a small school into a huge school of 1,000 people, maybe from maybe 100 people to 1,000, and that is so overwhelming. I think there needs to be that first year needs to be more of a transition year. Here in Ireland, we have a transition year in fourth year, from junior cycle into leaving cycle. There is a choice to do a transition year, but I think it's more valuable in the transition from primary school to secondary school, because that's that settling in period. And that's where, if that's not right, if they don't settle in right there, that might finish their whole chances of employment in the future. It could be the make or break. And if it goes wrong, and that's where the bullying starts, or that's where they're being forced to do things they're not able to do, like subjects they're not able to learn, and maybe there's some areas that they're really, really good at, and they're not being, heightened and promoted. And I definitely think we need to go back to looking at that stage of their development towards employment and getting it right, all the little basic steps. If one thing is missing, it might all go wrong. For example, I know a child who was, there was a seating arrangement in a class, and he wasn't in the day, the seating arrangement. And the next day he came in, he didn't know where to sit. And that happened, that went on for months, because he had no seat. He wasn't allocated a seat. And he couldn't talk about it, but he internalized it, and the worry of that seat took away, that's what took over.
Yeah.
So that stopped him from blooming in school, and it stopped him from going to school eventually. It went on for a few years, and the focus was on why doesn't he want to go to school. But it all started with that simple little thing.
Yeah. So that small little, I think, a failure
Very,
on the,
very fixable thing.
yeah, it's a small little failure on the logistic has a huge impact on that child, which can just create impact, lifelong impact on that individual.
It could be a sensory problem. It could be some sensory difficulty too that no one else is aware of.
Yeah.
Or it could be subtle bullying that starts there, that isn't that they're not watched carefully enough. And also maybe lack of communication. Education is focused on education, but it's not focused on people skills. It's not focused on empathy. It's not focused on building self-esteem. And these things lead to a whole pile of problems down the line that needn't be there. Because if you can find out what this person is really good at, and maybe if there was more testing done in first year, because I think a lot of disabilities are missed in primary education. And this might be a second chance to find them and find the abilities, because I don't believe there is a disability. But why force a square peg into a round hole? Why force a child to do what they're not able to do? And why not find what they're brilliant at, and let's concentrate on that.
That is so true for everyone, for all of us, right? Let's focus on our strength and how we better manage our weaknesses. We all have some weaknesses here and there, but we are able to manage. And some individuals on the spectrum, they have bigger challenges in managing these weaknesses. So how do we help them? So you are absolutely right. That's a key. Focus on the abilities.
Yeah, and maybe if 5 days of school is too stressful, look at how COVID proved that, we can now learn everything from home, do everything from home. So if it goes back to normal again, perhaps a more blended approach can be taken. That classes can be streamed online if they miss school, or if it's too stressful, that they can come in or not. But that they won't miss their education, but that it's it's tailored around them. I know education, there's so many children, in these big schools, and classes are packed and everything. But if you have that many people who aren't reaching their highest, if they're not making it through the education system, then they're a bigger burden on the taxpayer, and they might never find employment. So maybe there should be different pathways to employment, from education, and maybe more apprenticeships in school. Maybe after that junior cycle, maybe they don't have to go on and do exams to go to college. Some need to do that, but maybe some need to go into an apprenticeship. Maybe companies need to sponsor these apprenticeships and tailor courses, and that they can go in straight to work from school and be work ready, and maybe there needs to be new ways of thinking about the workplace, because 16-year-olds are very capable of working.
Yeah.
And they're very capable of innovating.
That's right.
And, they have wonderful imaginations.
And it's just a matter of giving them an opportunity and giving them the right environment so that they can really contribute to the organization. So talking about employment, and you mentioned that, from school to ultimately employment. Of course, there are some programs out there. Organizations are doing an internship or apprentice kind of models where they are. But in my view, and of course, I would like to know your view, that there is a lot more we can do than small initiatives here and there. So
there is, because in Ireland, especially, almost every child is expected to go to college. And to get into college, they're expected to have huge points. It's a point system. So the Leaving Cert is the final exam. So it's all based on this Leaving Cert. Well, if a child suffers from anxiety in their final year, or in the middle of that exam, or if they don't make it through the Leaving Cert, well, then they won't get into good courses in college. Whereas maybe there was a less stressful way of getting them to employment that didn't involve going to college, and maybe college can come later.
Yeah, and that's a whole ripple effect, right? One thing fails and it starts affecting the employment ultimately.
But like there's loads of like all the tech jobs, they can be training programs. tech, counting, as well as like some of the other skills, like craft skills like electricians and carpentry and all that. But a lot of the tech jobs, they can come from school, and there should be more tech subjects in school. Not the usual like maths, Irish, English, history, geography, the sciences, and it should be way more tech based.
Yes, and Ireland is big, is a hub of for innovation, global hub. So I can see your passion and your thinking on the technology side,
And
because
even not tech, even life skills.
yeah,
I mean, I follow this monk called Dan DePani, and he said we all tell kids to concentrate, and parents tell kids to concentrate, and teachers, but nobody ever taught anybody how to concentrate.
yeah,
Maybe some people need to be taught how to concentrate,
absolutely.
and maybe we need to empower children to use their imagination as well, because a lot of that is stopped and prevented, and doubt sets in, and self-talk, and it just ruins creativity.
Yeah, yeah. So great, Mary. This is a great conversation. I would like to shift gears a little bit and talk about the employment. Earlier you mentioned, and during this time, during the COVID time, as you know, there are a lot of organizations, they are adopting these remote work models, and because it is we are kind of forced to work remotely. But the good news is some companies are adopting these remote work models for people on the spectrum, but there are some challenges. So share some of those challenges and your concerns related to remote work.
Oh, I think remote work is wonderful for people on the spectrum, but the induction is the most important phase. And every little step, even if you think it's tiny, every little step really means a lot. So equipment has to be perfect. And also those, important like questions that they pick for, getting to know one another games. Like they can be very general, like what's the first concert you ever went to? Maybe somebody didn't ever go to a concert, because maybe they're, who knows? But every little thing is very important. Every little step needs to be thought out with great care. And once that initial stage is ironed out and completed, well, then it's smooth sailing from then on.
Yeah.
But those very first stages, whether it's in school or whether it's in primary school or secondary school or college or work, all that very first days, weeks, months, they're very important. And all the equipment and any little thing that can eliminate stress is very important.
Yeah.
So the environment as well.
And Mary, as you know, at Rangam we do as part of the Sourceable. That's where we spend maximum time in educating employers, because those small onboarding related issues can be a huge challenge. Yeah. So and again, you I think you mentioned anxiety. So tell us a little bit about some of these logistic related failures, which is really causing this anxiety.
But if there's a logistical failure, then the anxiety builds up, and it shifts to that, away from the integration. Social integration is hard enough for anyone. It's really difficult for someone on the spectrum, and they need to be able to concentrate on that, and they need to build up relationships from the very start, because it's much harder for them. than neurotypicals. So we really need to have more empathy around that and understand that these steps are very important.
Yeah. So any advice for corporations or companies who is building autism hiring programs or in this area? What are the key things they should consider as they are building their program?
Well, I noticed some of them are doing virtual tours of offices, but also the step-by-step, every little step sent days, even a week beforehand. Preparation is the key to everything. And the equipment, send everything way before it's needed so that people can be familiar with it. And there should be no problems then. And a step-by-step, every little step. So there's no stress. Just eliminate the stress that around all of that.
Any thoughts on this social disconnect and working from home? How can we make it balanced?
Well, I think we definitely need to start thinking about building online communities, meetups. There needs to be more thought about, and I know they're doing that. I know there's drinks after work even, but there needs to be ways, creative ways of helping people get to know one another and their hobbies, interests, and find people like themselves. Because it's hard enough in real life, but online, you're missing that. Every human has a basic need for human connection.
Mm-hmm.
So probably break it down into smaller groups and let people get to know one another one by one even, but arrange that. It certainly has created new possibilities in that field. But I think it's important to be able to go into work in that time too. It definitely is important to be able to meet. But also organizations need to think of outside of work too. When people go, when they're back in the workplace and when people go home, there needs to be arranged things for that very beginning, settling down period in a new town or a new city or a new living accommodation. Maybe the person doesn't know how to get from A to B, or maybe they need to be put at a meetup. Maybe they need to be arranged for them, and varied.
Excellent. No, thank you for all the great advice. We truly appreciate some of this and pretty much all of this. We always recommend and we work with companies, and this is where I see that us as a whole society and a solution provider to these organizations. How do we build these innovative models and innovative strategy so that they can really thrive at the workplace? So thank you for sharing some of the great thoughts and ideas and suggestions. Before we conclude our today's segment, last thought and anything which you'd like to share as call for action.
A call for action: just be more open-minded. Just think outside the box, and that these people are a great value to we need to see the value in neurodiversity and what neurodiverse people can bring to an organization. And my biggest worry is that they'll work too hard, and this is happening in the home. That needs to be more policy about working hours, because they actually they go the extra mile.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You're absolutely right that work-life balance is so important, and mainly for people on the spectrum, that's one of their challenge, and we experience that I personally have experienced that, and we put extra efforts, more open-minded, more careful, more empathetic, and make sure that we understand, we monitor, and we help them manage that effectively and efficiently for physical, not only physical, but mental health for everyone. So
Because get rid of the stress and you have smooth sailing,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
absolutely.
And it's easy a lot of the time to get rid of the stress because
Yeah,
they're only just small things.
yes,
Um,
that's what it really matters. So thank you so much, Mary, for all these great ideas and suggestions and great conversation. We wish you all the best, and thank you everyone for joining today. We will continue our conversation on empathy, innovation, and employment. So please continue joining us every
I
Wednesday.
will indeed.
And thank you, Mary. Yes,
And
please.
thank you very much. And looking forward to seeing you in Ireland again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as it opens up,
Yep.
2021. That's the plan. So looking forward to see you in person soon.
Thank you very much. Take
Thank
care.
thank you, Mary.
Bye.
Bye bye.